You sold my house behind my back? My voice shook the kitchen walls, echoing off the faded family photos and the chipped linoleum. Julia's eyes went wide, her hand frozen on the pen, and for a split second the mask slipped. He knew. He knew I knew. And in that moment the world I'd built for 72 years, every memory, every sacrifice, every ounce of trust, cracked wide open. But let me take you back, because betrayal this deep doesn't happen overnight. My name is Odessa Mae Johnson, and this house on the corner of Willow and 14th has been my world for nearly half a century. I raised my son, Deshaun, here after my husband passed. I watched the neighborhood change, watched my friends move away, watched the city grow up around me. But I never thought I'd have to watch my own family turn against me. It started with a knock on the door one rainy Thursday. Deshaun and his wife Julia stood on my porch, soaked to the bone, their suitcases at their feet. "Mama, we just need a place to stay for a little while," Deshaun said, using the nickname he'd given me as a boy. I didn't hesitate. My door was always open to my son, no matter how old he got, no matter how many times life knocked him down. Julia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I should have noticed that then. The first few weeks were easy enough. Julia helped around the house, cooked dinner, even brought me tea in the evenings. Deshaun looked for work, or so he said. I was just glad to have family in the house again, laughter in the halls, footsteps on the stairs. But little things started to change. Julia would ask about the bills, about the mortgage, about the deed. She'd linger in my study, her fingers tracing the edges of my old file cabinet. "You ever think about downsizing, Mama? She'd ask, her voice light but her eyes sharp. "This house is a lot for one person." I brushed it off. I'd heard it before, from neighbors, from friends, even from Deshaun. But this was my home. I wasn't ready to let go. Still the questions kept coming. "Where do you keep your important papers, Odessa? Do you have a will? Who's your lawyer?" I started to feel uneasy, but I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, this was family. Then things started to go missing. My spare keys. A bank statement. The letter from my insurance company. Julia always had an answer. "I must have moved it when I was cleaning." "Maybe you misplaced it, Mama. But I knew my house. I knew my things. And I knew something wasn't right. One night I heard Julia on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low, urgent. "Yes, I have the deed. She trusts me. We can close by the end of the month." My heart pounded so loud I thought she'd hear it from the hallway. I pressed my back against the wall, listening as she rattled off details about my house, my life, as if they were just items on a grocery list. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my armchair, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every odd look, every time Julia had asked about the house. I realized I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next morning I called my cousin Loretta, who used to work as a private investigator. I told her everything. My suspicions, the missing items, the strange phone calls. Loretta didn't hesitate. "Odessa, you need to protect yourself. Get a camera. Don't tell nobody. Just watch." I felt a pang of guilt at the thought of spying on my own family, but the fear was stronger. With Loretta's help, I bought a small, discreet camera and hid it in the study, aimed right at my desk where I kept all my important documents. I set it up to record whenever there was movement, and I hid the footage on a password-protected drive. I told no one, not even Deshaun. For days nothing happened. Julia and Deshaun went about their routines, acting as if everything was normal. I started to doubt myself, to wonder if I was losing my mind. But then one afternoon, while I was supposedly out at the market, Julia entered the study. The camera caught everything. She opened my desk drawer, pulled out the deed to the house, and took photos of every page with her phone. She rifled through my bank statements, my will, my insurance policies. She even took a call, speaking in a hushed voice. "Yes, I have the deed. She'll sign the papers tomorrow. She trusts me completely." I watched the footage that night, my hands shaking. The betrayal was undeniable. Julia was planning something, and Deshaun was either complicit or completely oblivious. I didn't know which was worse. I spent the night in tears, mourning not just the loss of trust but the loss of the family I thought I had. The next day Julia was all smiles. She brought me breakfast in bed, fussed over me, and suggested we go over some important paperwork together. I played along, my heart pounding in my chest. She handed me a stack of documents explaining that they were just routine updates. Something about simplifying the ownership of the house, making things easier for everyone. Just sign here, Odessa, she said, her voice sweet as honey. It's for your own good. I stared at the papers Julia slid across the table, my hands trembling just enough for her to notice. She reached out, her fingers brushing mine, her smile wide and practiced. It's just a formality, Odessa. You know we'd never do anything to hurt you. Her words dripped with sugar, but I could taste the bitterness underneath. I glanced at Deshawn, hoping for a sign, a flicker of guilt, a warning in his eyes. But he just looked away, his jaw clenched, his gaze fixed on the window as if he couldn't bear to meet mine. I picked up the pen, my mind racing. The camera had caught Julia in the act, but I needed more. I needed to know if Deshawn was in on it, if my own son was willing to sell me out for a quick payday. I forced a smile, steadying my voice. You know, Julia, I've always trusted you. But I'm old-fashioned. I like to read every word before I sign anything. I flipped through the pages, pretending to study the legal jargon, my eyes scanning for anything that looked out of place. Julia's smile faltered for a split second. Of course, Odessa. Take your time. She stood up, smoothing her skirt, and busied herself with the dishes. Deshawn finally looked at me, his eyes tired, his shoulders slumped. Mama, we just want what's best for you. You know that, right? His voice was soft, almost pleading. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that somewhere inside the boy I raised was still there, still loyal, still mine. But the evidence was piling up and my heart was breaking with every new piece. I set the papers aside, pushing my chair back from the table. I think I'll take a walk, I said, forcing a smile. Clear my head. Julia nodded, her eyes never leaving the stack of documents. Don't be too long, Odessa. The agent said we need those signed by tomorrow. I stepped out onto the porch, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard. I pulled out my phone and called Loretta, my voice barely above a whisper. She tried to get me to sign the house over, I said, my words tumbling out in a rush. I have her on camera, Loretta. She took pictures of the deed, my will, everything. Loretta's voice was calm, steady. Don't sign anything, Odessa. Not until we know exactly what they're up to. I'll come by tonight. We'll go over the footage together. I hung up, my hands shaking, and sat on the porch swing watching the world go by. Kids rode their bikes down the street. Neighbors waved as they walked their dogs. The city hummed with life. But inside my house, a storm was brewing and I was the only one who knew it. That evening after dinner, I pretended to be tired and went to my room early. I locked the door, pulled out the hidden drive and watched the footage again, this time with Loretta on the phone. She's planning to sell the house, I whispered, my voice cracking. She told someone on the phone that I'd sign the papers tomorrow. Loretta was silent for a moment, then said, You need to confront Deshawn. Alone. See if he knows what's going on. But be careful, Odessa. If Julia's desperate enough to do this, there's no telling what she'll do next. I waited until Julia went out to the store, then found Deshawn in the garage tinkering with his old bike. Deshawn, I said, my voice trembling, can we talk? He looked up, surprised, wiping his hands on a rag. Sure, Mama. What's on your mind? I closed the door behind me, my heart pounding. Julia wants me to sign the house over. Did you know about that? His face went pale, his eyes darting to the floor. Mama, it's not what you think. We need the money. Julia lost her job and I haven't found anything steady. The bills are piling up. She said it was just a way to get a loan to help us get back on our feet. I stared at him, my heart breaking. You are going to sell my house, Deshawn. The house your daddy built. The house I raised you in. He shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, Mama. I swear. Julia said you'd be better off in a smaller place, that we could all start fresh. I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to reach out and hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But the trust was gone, shattered by the weight of his confession. I can't help you if you're lying to me, Deshawn. I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. He wiped his eyes, his voice barely a whisper. Julia's been talking to a real estate agent. She forged your signature on some of the paperwork. She said if you wouldn't sign, she'd find a way to make it happen anyway. The room spun, the air thick with betrayal. I leaned against the wall, struggling to catch my breath. You need to leave, Deshawn. Both of you. Tonight. He shook his head, panic in his eyes. Mama, please. We have nowhere else to go. I steeled myself, my voice cold. You should have thought of that before you tried to steal from me. I left him in the garage, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs, and went back inside. Julia was waiting in the kitchen, her eyes sharp, her smile gone. Everything okay, Odessa? I met her gaze, my own eyes hard. You need to pack your things. Both of you. I know what you've done. Julia's face didn't change at first. She just blinked, slow and deliberate, as if she was trying to decide whether to laugh or to fight. Then her lips curled into a tight, bitter smile. You don't know anything, Odessa. You're tired. You're confused. Maybe you should get some rest. She said it like a threat, not a suggestion. I stood my ground, my hands clenched at my sides. I'm not confused, Julia. I know you took pictures of my deed. I know you've been talking to a real estate agent. I know you forged my signature. For a moment, the kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Then Julia's eyes narrowed. You think anyone's going to believe you? You're old. You forget things. You lose things. You probably lost the deed yourself. Her words stung, but I refused to let her see it. I have proof, I said, my voice steady. I have you on camera. Every move you made in my study. Every word you said on the phone. That got her attention. She took a step back, her bravado faltering. You're bluffing. I shook my head. I'm not. And if you don't leave tonight, I'll call the police. I'll show them everything. Julia's eyes darted to the hallway as if she was calculating her escape. You wouldn't do that to your own son, she spat. Deshawn's got nothing to do with this, I replied, though my heart ached with the lie. This is about you. She glared at me, her jaw tight. You think you're so smart. You think you can just throw us out and go back to your little life. But you need us, Odessa. Who's going to take care of you when you fall? Who's going to help you when you can't get out of bed? I felt the anger rise in my chest, hot and sharp. I'd rather be alone than live with thieves. Julia stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind her. I heard her stomping up the stairs, her voice raised in angry whispers as she called Deshawn's name. I stood there for a long moment, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. I wanted to cry, to scream, to collapse on the floor and let the grief swallow me whole. But I couldn't. Not yet. I went to my room, locked the door, and called Loretta. They know, I whispered. Julia knows I have proof. I told her to leave. Loretta's voice was calm, but I could hear the worry underneath. You did the right thing, Odessa. But you need to be careful. If she's desperate, she might try something reckless. Do you want me to come over? I hesitated, pride warring with fear. No, not yet. I need to see what they do. But I'll keep my phone close. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the window made me jump. I kept the camera feed open on my phone, watching for any sign that Julia might try to destroy the evidence. But the house was quiet, too quiet. In the morning, I found Deshawn sitting on the porch, his head in his hands. He looked up as I approached, his eyes red and swollen. She's packing, he said, his voice hollow. She wants to leave, but I don't know where we'll go. I sat beside him, the old wood of the swing creaking under our weight. You made your choices, Deshawn. I can't help you if you won't help yourself. He nodded, silent tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Mama. I really am. I put my arm around him just for a moment and let him cry. For all the anger, all the betrayal, he was still my son. But I couldn't save him from the consequences of his actions. By noon, Julia had packed her things. She came down the stairs with her suitcase, her face set in a mask of cold fury. You'll regret this, Odessa, she said, her voice low and venomous. You think you're safe, but you're not. People like you end up alone for a reason. I didn't answer. I just watched as she walked out the door, slamming it behind her so hard the windows rattled. Deshaun followed her, his shoulders slumped, his steps heavy. He paused at the door, looking back at me one last time. "I'm sorry, Mama," he whispered. "I wish things were different." I nodded, unable to speak. He closed the door gently and then they were gone. The house was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the peaceful quiet of a home filled with love, but the heavy, aching silence of loss. I wandered from room to room, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs. Everything felt different, as if the house itself was mourning with me. That evening Loretta came over. We sat at the kitchen table, the camera footage playing on her laptop. "You did good, Odessa," she said, her hand warm on mine. "You protected yourself. You stood up for what's yours." I nodded, but the victory felt hollow. "I just wanted my family," I whispered. "I just wanted to help." Loretta squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the people we love hurt us the most. But you're not alone. I'm here. Your neighbors are here. You have people who care." I wiped my eyes, grateful for her kindness. "Thank you, Loretta. I don't know what I would have done without you." As the sun set, casting golden light through the kitchen window, I realized that I was still standing. Bruised but not broken. Betrayed but not defeated. And for the first time in a long time I felt a glimmer of hope. The next morning I woke to the sound of rain tapping against the window, a gentle rhythm that reminded me of childhood storms in Mississippi. I sat up slowly, the ache in my bones a familiar companion, and listened to the quiet. No footsteps on the stairs, no voices in the kitchen, no clatter of dishes. For the first time in months, the house was truly mine again. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chairs. The events of the past days replayed in my mind. Julia's cold eyes, Deshaun's broken apology, the sting of betrayal. I wondered where they were now, if they were safe, if they were together. Part of me wanted to call, to check on them, to forgive. But another part, the part that had survived loss and hardship and heartbreak, knew I had to let them go. Loretta called just after 9. "How you holding up, Odessa?" she asked, her voice warm and steady. "I'm all right," I said, though I wasn't sure it was true. "The house is quiet. Too quiet." She chuckled softly. "Sometimes quiet is a blessing, honey. Gives you space to heal." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "You're right. I keep thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't set up that camera. If I'd just signed those papers." Loretta's tone turned serious. "You did what you had to do. Don't let guilt eat you up. Julia made her choices. Deshaun made his. You protected yourself, and that's nothing to be ashamed of." I sipped my coffee, letting her words sink in. "Thank you, Loretta. I don't know what I would have done without you." She laughed. "You'd have figured it out. You always do." After we hung up, I decided to clean the study. I opened the desk drawer, checking to make sure all my documents were still there. The deed, the will, the insurance papers. Everything was in its place. I locked them away, double-checking the key, and made a mental note to call my lawyer and let him know what had happened. As I dusted the shelves, I found an old photo of Deshaun as a boy, grinning up at me with a gap-toothed smile. My heart ached with longing for the child he once was, before life and desperation changed him. I traced his face with my finger, whispering a prayer for his safety wherever he was. The day passed slowly. I busied myself with chores, trying to fill the emptiness with activity. I baked cornbread, swept the porch, watered the plants. Neighbors stopped by to check on me. Miss Ruth from next door brought a casserole. Mr. Carter offered to mow the lawn. Their kindness warmed me, reminded me that I wasn't as alone as I felt. That evening, as the rain let up and the sky turned a soft lavender, I sat on the porch swing and watched the world go by. Children played in puddles, their laughter echoing down the street. I closed my eyes, letting the cool breeze wash over me, and tried to let go of the anger, the hurt, the disappointment. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I hesitated, my heart pounding, then opened it. "You think you won, but this isn't over. Jay." My hands shook as I read the message. "Julia." I stared at the screen, fear and anger warring inside me. I wanted to ignore it, to pretend it was just an empty threat. But I knew Julia. She was smart, determined, and desperate. I couldn't afford to let my guard down. I called Loretta, my voice trembling. She texted me. Said it's not over. Loretta's voice was sharp, all business. Don't respond. Save the message. I'll come by in the morning. We'll go to the police. I nodded, swallowing my fear. Thank you. That night, I locked every door and window, checked the camera feed twice, and slept with the phone on my nightstand. I dreamed of storms and shadows, of voices whispering in the dark. When I woke, the house was still, the only sound my own breathing. Loretta arrived just after sunrise, her face set in a determined frown. Let's go, she said, and together we drove to the police station. I showed the officer the footage, the text message, the forged documents Julia had tried to get me to sign. He listened carefully, taking notes, his expression grave. We'll open an investigation, he said. You did the right thing, Ms. Johnson. If she contacts you again, let us know immediately. And don't let anyone in the house unless you know them. I nodded, relief and anxiety mingling in my chest. Thank you, officer. Back home, Loretta hugged me tight. You're stronger than you think, Odessa. Don't let her scare you. You've got people on your side. I smiled, tears prickling my eyes. I know. I just wish it didn't have to be this way. As the days passed, I settled into a new routine. I kept the doors locked, the cameras rolling, and my phone close. I leaned on my neighbors, my friends, my faith. Slowly, the fear began to fade, replaced by a quiet resolve. I would not let Julia, or anyone, take my home, my peace, or my dignity. A week passed, and the world outside my window kept spinning, even as my own life felt like it had been turned upside down. I tried to keep busy, filling my days with small tasks, organizing old photo albums, tending to my garden, calling friends I hadn't spoken to in years. But every time the phone rang or a car slowed in front of the house, my heart would leap into my throat. I couldn't shake the feeling that Julia was still out there, watching, waiting for her next move. One afternoon, as I was pruning the rose bushes by the front walk, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, clippers in hand, to see Deshaun standing at the gate. He looked thinner, older, his clothes rumpled and his eyes hollow. For a moment, I just stared at him, unsure whether to run to him or turn him away. Mama, oh, he said softly, his voice barely more than a whisper. Can I talk to you? I hesitated, the memory of his betrayal still raw. But he was my son, and some part of me would always want to believe in him. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. We sat on the porch swing, the silence between us heavy and awkward. I'm sorry, he said finally, his hands twisting in his lap. I know I messed up. I let Julia talk me into things I never should have agreed to. I was scared, Mama. I didn't know what else to do. I looked at him, searching his face for the boy I'd raised. You could have come to me, Deshaun. You could have told me the truth. He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I know. I was ashamed. I thought I could fix it before you found out, but everything just got worse. Julia, she's not the person I thought she was. He's gone, Mama. She left me, took what little money we had and disappeared. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. Relief, sadness, anger, pity. Where have you been staying? I asked quietly. Couch surfing. A friend's place here, a shelter there. I'm looking for work, but it's hard. Nobody wants to hire someone with gaps in their resume and no address. I sighed, my heart aching for him. You can't stay here, Deshaun. Not after what happened. I need time. I need space to heal. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I understand. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I wanted you to know I never meant to hurt you. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the creak of the swing and the distant hum of traffic. Finally, Deshaun stood, his shoulders slumped. I'll go. I just needed to see you, Mama. I needed to say it to your face. I watched him walk down the path, his figure shrinking with every step. I wanted to call out, to tell him I forgave him, but the words caught in my throat. Some wounds take time to heal, and I wasn't ready yet. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. I thought about all the years I'd spent putting Deshaun first, sacrificing my own happiness for his. I thought about the little boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and wild stories, the teenager who'd made me proud with every accomplishment, the man who'd lost his way. I realized then that forgiveness wasn't just about letting him off the hook. It was about freeing myself from the weight of anger and disappointment. It was about choosing peace over pain, hope over bitterness. The next morning I called my lawyer, Mr. Franklin, and told him everything. He listened patiently, his voice calm and reassuring. "You did the right thing, Ms. Johnson. I'll make sure your documents are secure. We'll update your will, add extra protections. And if Julia or anyone else tries to come after your house again, you'll be ready." I thanked him, feeling a sense of relief for the first time in weeks. I spent the rest of the day making copies of my important papers, storing them in a safe deposit box at the bank. I changed the locks on the doors, installed new security cameras, and gave a spare key to Loretta just in case. As the days turned into weeks, the fear began to fade. I started to reclaim my life, one small step at a time. I joined a book club at the community center, started volunteering at the church food pantry, and even took up painting, a hobby I'd always wanted to try but never found the time for. The house felt different now, quieter but also stronger, as if it had weathered a storm and come out the other side. I found comfort in the routines, in the familiar creak of the stairs, the smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of rain on the roof. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the fireflies dance in the twilight, Loretta joined me, 2 mugs of sweet tea in hand. "You're doing good, Odessa," she said, her eyes kind. "You're stronger than you know." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle in my bones. "I'm getting there, Loretta. One day at a time." Summer drifted into fall, and the leaves on Willow Street turned gold and crimson, swirling in the wind like confetti. I found myself growing stronger with each passing day, my steps lighter, my heart less burdened. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined me. I was learning to live again, to trust myself, to find joy in the small things. One Saturday morning, I woke to the sound of laughter outside my window. I peeked through the curtains and saw the neighborhood children playing tag in the yard, their voices bright and carefree. For a moment, I just watched, letting their happiness wash over me. It reminded me of when Deshaun was little, chasing fireflies in the dusk, his laughter ringing through the air. I smiled, feeling a bittersweet ache in my chest. Later that day, I decided to bake a batch of sweet potato pies for the church bake sale. As I mixed the dough, the kitchen filled with the warm scent of cinnamon and nutmeg, and I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Baking had always been my therapy, a way to pour love into something tangible. I hummed an old gospel tune as I worked, the melody lifting my spirits. Just as I was pulling the pies from the oven, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door to find Miss Ruth standing on the porch, her arms full of groceries. "Thought you could use a little company," she said with a wink. I laughed and ushered her inside, grateful for the distraction. We sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea and sharing stories. Miss Ruth told me about her grandchildren, her garden, the latest gossip from the block. I listened, nodding, laughing, letting her words fill the empty spaces in my heart. It felt good to be seen, to be heard, to be part of something bigger than my own troubles. As the afternoon sun slanted through the window, Miss Ruth grew quiet. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Odessa, I know it's been a hard year. But you're not alone. We're all here for you. Don't ever forget that." Her words brought tears to my eyes, and I squeezed her hand in gratitude. "Thank you, Ruth. I don't know what I'd do without you." After she left, I sat in the quiet kitchen, the scent of sweet potato and cinnamon lingering in the air. I thought about all the people who had shown up for me: Loretta, Miss Ruth, Mr. Carter, the ladies at church. They had become my family in ways I never expected, filling the gaps left by those who had betrayed me. That evening, I took a walk around the neighborhood, the cool air crisp against my skin. I passed the old playground where Deshaun used to play, the corner store where I'd bought penny candy as a girl, the church where I'd sung in the choir every Sunday. Each place held a memory, a piece of my story, a reminder of the life I'd built. As I walked, I felt a sense of pride swell in my chest. I had survived heartbreak, betrayal, and loss, but I was still standing. I was still Odessa Mae Johnson, daughter of the South, mother, friend, survivor. No one could take that from me. When I returned home, I found a letter in the mailbox. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized Deshaun's handwriting. I carried it inside, my hands trembling, and sat at the kitchen table to read. Mama, oh, the letter began. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm writing to ask for it anyway. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about the choices I made, and I'm ashamed. I let Julia talk me into things I never should have agreed to. I was weak and I hurt you. I'm sorry. I'm working now, saving up for a place of my own. I'm trying to be better, to make you proud again. I hope one day you can forgive me, but if you can't, I understand. I just wanted you to know that I love you and I always will. Your son, Deshawn. I read the letter twice, tears streaming down my face. The pain was still there, but so was the love. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the old wooden box where I kept my most precious memories. Maybe forgiveness would come in time. Maybe it wouldn't. But for now, I was grateful for the chance to heal. That night, I sat on the porch watching the stars blink to life in the velvet sky. I thought about the journey I'd been on, the lessons I'd learned, the strength I'd found within myself. I wasn't the same woman I'd been before, but maybe that was a good thing. Maybe, just maybe, I was becoming someone even stronger. The days grew shorter and the air turned brisk, carrying the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. I found comfort in the rhythm of the seasons, in the way life kept moving forward no matter what storms had passed. My house, once a place of tension and fear, began to feel like home again. I filled it with music, laughter, and the gentle hum of daily life. One Sunday after church, the ladies from the choir came over for lunch. We crowded around the kitchen table, passing plates of fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread, our voices rising in song and laughter. For a few hours, the house was alive with joy, the walls echoing with the sound of friendship and belonging. I realized then how much I had missed this community, connection, the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with people who cared. After everyone left, I sat in the quiet, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. I thought about how far I'd come, about the darkness I'd walked through and the light I'd found on the other side. I knew there would still be hard days, moments when the past crept in and tried to steal my peace. But I also knew I was stronger now, more resilient, more determined to protect what mattered most. One afternoon, as I was sweeping the porch, a car pulled up to the curb. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Deshawn step out, a tentative smile on his face. He walked up the path, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the chill. I met him at the steps, unsure what to say. "Hey Mama, oh," he said softly. "I hope it's okay that I stopped by." I nodded, my emotions swirling. "Of course, Deshawn. Come on in." We sat in the living room, the silence heavy but not hostile. He looked around, taking in the familiar surroundings, the photos on the walls, the worn armchair by the window. "It looks the same," he said, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "It is the same," I replied. "This house has seen a lot, but it's still standing. Just like me." He smiled, a little sad, a little hopeful. "I wanted to thank you for reading my letter. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm trying to do better. I got a job at the hardware store. It's not much, but it's honest work." I nodded, pride and sorrow mingling in my chest. "I'm glad to hear that, Deshawn. Everybody makes mistakes. What matters is what you do next." He looked down, his hands twisting in his lap. "I miss you, Mama. I miss home." I reached over and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You'll always be my son. But you have to build your own life now. You have to earn back the trust you lost." He nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "I know. I will. I promise." We sat together for a while, the silence comfortable, the wounds between us beginning to heal. When he left, I watched him walk down the path, his steps a little lighter than before. I knew it would take time, but I believed in him. I believed in us. That evening, I called Loretta and told her about Deshawn's visit. She listened, her voice warm and encouraging. "You did good, Odessa. Forgiveness is a gift not just for him but for you too. Letting go of the hurt makes room for something better." I thought about her words as I prepared for bed, the house quiet and peaceful around me. I realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or pretending the pain never happened. It meant choosing to move forward, to open my heart to the possibility of healing. As winter settled in, I found myself looking forward to the holidays. I decorated the house with garlands and lights, baked cookies for the neighbors, and sang carols with the church choir. The house was filled with warmth and laughter, the shadows of the past fading into the background. On Christmas Eve, I sat by the fire, a cup of cocoa in hand, and reflected on the year that had passed. I thought about the betrayal, the heartbreak, the fear. But I also thought about the strength I'd found, the friends who had stood by me, the son who was trying to make amends. I realized then that my story wasn't just about loss. It was about resilience, about the power of community, about the courage to stand up for myself. It was about learning to trust again, to open my heart to love and hope. As the clock struck midnight, I whispered a prayer of gratitude for all I had survived, and all I had yet to experience. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew I was ready to face them. The new year arrived with a gentle snowfall, blanketing Willow Street in white and turning the world into something soft and new. I stood at my window watching the flakes drift down, feeling a sense of quiet hope settle over me. The past was still there, but it no longer held me captive. I was ready to step into whatever came next. One morning, as I was sipping coffee and reading the newspaper, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a young woman standing on the porch, bundled in a bright red coat, her breath puffing in the cold air. She smiled, a little shy, and introduced herself as Tiana, the new social worker assigned to our neighborhood. "Miss Johnson, I've heard so much about you from the folks at church and the community center," she said, her eyes kind. "I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing, and let you know about some programs we're starting for seniors in the area." I invited her in, grateful for the company. We sat in the living room and she told me about a new support group for elders who'd experienced financial abuse, about workshops on protecting your assets, about ways to stay connected and safe. I listened, nodding, feeling a sense of validation. My story wasn't just mine. It was part of something bigger, a struggle faced by so many others. Tiana encouraged me to share my experience with the group, to help others find their voice and their strength. At first I hesitated. The thought of speaking about my pain in front of strangers made my stomach twist. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how important it was. If my story could help even one person avoid what I'd been through, it would be worth it. A week later, I stood in a circle of folding chairs at the community center, my hands trembling as I spoke. I told them about Julia, about the hidden camera, about the fear and the heartbreak. I told them about Loretta, about the neighbors who had rallied around me, about the slow, hard work of healing. As I spoke, I saw heads nodding, eyes shining with understanding. I wasn't alone. None of us were. After the meeting, several people came up to thank me, to share their own stories of betrayal and survival. We exchanged numbers, promising to check in on each other, to be a lifeline when things got hard. I left the center that day feeling lighter, as if a burden I'd carried for too long had finally been set down. Back at home, I found myself thinking about Julia. I wondered where she was, what she was doing, if she ever thought about the damage she'd caused. Part of me still felt anger, but another part felt pity. I realized that holding on to that anger only hurt me. I decided right then to let it go, to wish her well wherever she was, and to focus on my own peace. Spring crept in slowly, the snow melting away to reveal green shoots and budding flowers. I spent more time in the garden, coaxing life from the earth, finding joy in the simple act of nurturing something new. The neighbors often stopped by to chat, to share seeds and stories, to laugh in the sunshine. My world, once so small and fearful, was opening up again. One afternoon, as I was planting marigolds along the front walk, Deshaun appeared at the gate. He looked healthier, more confident, his eyes brighter than I'd seen in months. He carried a small box wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "Hey Mama, oh," he called, his voice warm. "Got something for you." I wiped my hands on my jeans and met him at the gate. He handed me the box, his smile a little nervous. "It's nothing fancy, but I made it myself. Been taking a woodworking class at the rec center." I opened the box to find a beautiful wooden jewelry box, polished smooth and lined with velvet. My breath caught in my throat. "Deshaun, it's beautiful," I whispered. He shrugged, a little embarrassed. "I wanted to make you something. Something real. Something that lasts." I hugged him, holding him tight, feeling the last pieces of my broken heart begin to knit together. "Thank you, baby. I'm proud of you." We sat on the porch talking about his job, his new apartment, the friends he'd made at the rec center. He told me about his plans for the future, about the mistakes he'd made and the lessons he'd learned. I listened, my heart full, grateful for the second chance. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I realized that forgiveness wasn't a single act, but a journey. It was choosing every day to let go of the past and embrace the present. It was opening my heart to love even after it had been broken. That night, I placed the jewelry box on my dresser, a symbol of hope and healing. I knew there would still be hard days, but I also knew I was not alone. I had my friends, my community, my son. I had myself. As the weeks passed, life settled into a gentle, hopeful rhythm. I found myself waking up each morning with a sense of purpose, eager to see what the day would bring. The garden flourished under my care, bursts of color lining the walkway and filling the air with the sweet scent of blossoms. I started hosting Sunday dinners again, inviting neighbors and friends to gather around my table, sharing food and laughter and stories late into the evening. One Sunday, as we cleared the dishes and poured sweet tea, Miss Ruth leaned over and squeezed my hand. "Odessa, you've brought this house back to life. It's like the heart of the neighborhood again." Her words filled me with pride. I looked around at the faces gathered in my kitchen. Loretta, Mr. Carter, the choir ladies, even a few of the neighborhood kids, and felt a deep sense of belonging. After everyone left, I sat on the porch, the night air warm and soft. I thought about how much had changed in just a few months. The fear and uncertainty that once haunted these rooms had been replaced by laughter and love. I realized that, in saving my house, I had also saved myself. One afternoon, I received a call from Tiana, the social worker. "Odessa, we're putting together a panel for Elder Justice Awareness Month. We'd love for you to share your story, how you protected yourself, how you rebuilt your life. You'd be an inspiration to so many." The thought of speaking in front of a crowd made my stomach flutter, but I knew how important it was. I agreed, and over the next few weeks I worked with Tiana to prepare my talk. We met at the community center, going over the details, practicing my speech, making sure I felt comfortable and confident. The day of the event arrived and I stood backstage, my heart pounding. I looked out at the audience. Seniors, families, community leaders, even a few young people from the local high school. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "My name is Odessa Mae Johnson," I began, my voice steady. "And I'm here to tell you that you are never too old, too alone, or too scared to stand up for yourself. I know what it's like to be betrayed by someone you love, to feel like your world is falling apart. But I also know what it's like to find strength you didn't know you had, to rebuild your life with the help of friends and community." I told them about Julia, about the hidden camera, about the fear and the heartbreak. I told them about Loretta, about the neighbors who had rallied around me, about the slow, hard work of healing. I spoke about forgiveness, about letting go of anger, about finding hope in the darkest of times. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. People came up to thank me, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. I felt a sense of pride and purpose I hadn't felt in years. I realized that my pain had not been in vain. It had become a source of strength, a way to help others find their own courage. After the event, Tiana hugged me tight. "You did amazing, Odessa. You're a light for this community." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my soul. That evening, as I walked home under the stars, I thought about all the ways my life had changed. I was no longer the woman who lived in fear, who doubted her own worth, who let others decide her fate. I was Odessa Mae Johnson, strong, resilient, and unbreakable. A few days later, Deshawn called. "Mama, I've been thinking. I want to volunteer at the community center, help out with the youth programs. Maybe I can make a difference too." I felt tears prick my eyes, pride swelling in my chest. "That's wonderful, Deshawn. I'm proud of you." He laughed, a sound full of hope. "I'm just trying to follow your example, Mama. You showed me what it means to stand up, to keep going no matter what." We talked for a while, sharing stories and dreams, the distance between us shrinking with every word. I realized then that forgiveness was not just a gift I gave to Deshawn, but a gift I gave to myself. It allowed me to move forward, to open my heart to new possibilities, to embrace the future with hope. As spring turned to summer, I found myself looking forward to each new day. I planted sunflowers along the fence, their bright faces turning toward the sun. I joined a quilting circle at the church, learning new patterns and sharing laughter with old friends. I even started writing down my story, hoping that one day it might help someone else find their way. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the fireflies dance, Loretta joined me, her eyes twinkling. You know, Odessa, you're a survivor. You turned your pain into power. That's something special. I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle in my heart. Thank you, Loretta. I couldn't have done it without you. She squeezed my hand, her voice soft. We all need a little help sometimes. That's what community is for. As the stars blinked to life above us, I realized that my story was far from over. There would be new challenges, new joys, new lessons to learn. But I was ready. I was home. The heat of summer settled over the city, shimmering on the pavement and filling the air with the scent of honeysuckle and cut grass. I spent my mornings tending the garden, my afternoons at the community center, and my evenings on the porch, watching the world slow down as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. Life was simple, but it was mine, and I cherished every moment. One Saturday, as I was weeding the flower beds, a familiar voice called out from the sidewalk. I looked up to see Deshaun, a bag of groceries in one hand and a shy smile on his face. Thought you might need a few things, Mama O, he said, holding up the bag. I wiped my hands on my jeans and met him at the gate. You didn't have to do that, baby, I said, but my heart swelled with gratitude. He shrugged, looking a little bashful. I wanted to. You've always taken care of me. It's my turn now. We carried the groceries inside, unpacking them together in the kitchen. He'd brought all my favorites: fresh peaches, collard greens, a loaf of sweet bread from the bakery down the street. As we worked, we talked about everything and nothing, the conversation easy and warm. After lunch, we sat on the porch, sipping iced tea and watching the world go by. Deshaun told me about his work at the community center, about the kids he was mentoring, about the sense of purpose he'd found in helping others. I listened, pride blooming in my chest. You know, Mama, he said, his voice thoughtful, I used to think strength meant never needing help. But I see now that real strength is asking for help when you need it and giving it when you can. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. We all need each other, Deshaun. That's what makes us strong. He smiled, his eyes shining. I'm glad I have you, Mama. I'm glad you never gave up on me. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sound the distant laughter of children and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. I thought about all we'd been through, all the pain and healing, all the ways we'd grown. I realized that, in the end, love was what mattered most. Love that forgave, that endured, that rebuilt what had been broken. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Deshaun stood to leave. He hugged me tight, holding on a little longer than usual. I love you, Mama O, he whispered. I love you too, baby, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. After he left, I sat on the porch, watching the fireflies flicker in the gathering dusk. I felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet joy that filled every corner of my heart. I knew there would still be hard days, still be moments of doubt and fear. But I also knew I was not alone. I had my son, my friends, my community. I had myself. That night, as I prepared for bed, I paused in front of the mirror, studying the lines on my face, the silver in my hair. I saw strength there and wisdom and a beauty that came from surviving. I smiled at my reflection, proud of the woman I had become. Before turning in, I opened the jewelry box Deshaun had made for me, running my fingers over the smooth wood. Inside, I placed a new letter. A note to myself, a promise to keep moving forward, to keep loving, to keep living with courage and grace. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birds singing outside my window. I stretched, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, and whispered a prayer of gratitude for another day. I knew that life would bring new challenges, new joys, new lessons. But I was ready. I was home. As the weeks passed, I continued to share my story, to reach out to others who needed hope and encouragement. I spoke at churches, at community meetings, at the senior center. Each time I saw the same look in people's eyes. A mixture of pain and hope, fear and determination. I told them what I had learned, that no matter how dark things seem, there is always a way forward. That we are stronger than we know. That we are never truly alone. One afternoon after a talk at the library, a young woman approached me, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you, Ms. Johnson," she said. "Your story gave me the courage to stand up for myself. I thought I was alone, but now I know I'm not." I hugged her, feeling the circle of healing widen. I realized then that my story was not just about me. It was about all of us, about the power of community, about the strength that comes from standing together. As summer faded into fall once more, I looked around at the life I had rebuilt. The garden blooming, the house filled with laughter, the porch alive with friends and family. I knew there would still be storms, still be moments of doubt. But I also knew that I was ready for whatever came next. I was Odessa Mae Johnson, and this was my home. My story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The first cool breeze of autumn swept through the open window, carrying with it the scent of turning leaves and distant bonfires. I stood in my kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of spiced tea, and watched the world outside shift from green to gold. The seasons had changed, and so had I. There was a time when I thought my story would end in heartbreak, that the betrayal I'd suffered would be the last chapter. But life, I'd learned, always has more to give. One Saturday, the community center hosted a harvest festival. The whole neighborhood turned out. Children in bright sweaters, elders wrapped in shawls, tables piled high with homemade pies and jars of preserves. I set up a table with my sweet potato pies and peach cobbler, the recipes passed down from my mother and her mother before her. People lined up for a taste, and I felt the pride of generations in every bite. Deshaun arrived just as the sun was dipping low, his arms full of pumpkins for the children to paint. He grinned at me, his eyes full of light. "You always did know how to bring folks together, Mama O," he said, setting the pumpkins down and giving me a quick hug. I laughed, the sound ringing out across the festival grounds. It's easy when you've got good people around you. As the evening wore on, music filled the air, old soul tunes and gospel songs, voices rising in harmony. I danced with Loretta, our laughter mingling with the melody, and for a moment, I felt as young as I had in my girlhood. The worries of the past seemed far away, replaced by the warmth of community and the promise of tomorrow. Later, as the festival wound down and the stars blinked awake in the sky, I sat on a hay bale at the edge of the field, watching the children chase fireflies. Deshaun joined me, his face thoughtful. "Mama, do you ever wish things had turned out different?" he asked quietly. I thought about his question, about all the pain and all the healing, about the road we'd traveled to get here. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But then I look at where we are now and I know every step, good and bad, brought us here. We're stronger for it. We're wiser. And we're together." He nodded, a gentle smile on his lips. "I'm grateful for you, Mama. For your strength. For your love. I hope I can be half the person you are." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. "You already are, Deshaun. You already are." As we walked home under the canopy of stars, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The house glowed with light and laughter, the porch crowded with friends sharing stories and dreams. I realized that home wasn't just a place. It was the people who filled it, the love that held it together, the memories that gave it meaning. That night as I lay in bed, I thought about the journey I'd taken. I remembered the fear and the anger, the nights spent wondering if I'd ever feel safe again. I remembered the kindness of friends, the strength I'd found in myself, the forgiveness that had set me free. I realized that my story was not just about surviving, but about thriving, about choosing hope, about building something beautiful from the ashes of what was lost. In the weeks that followed, I continued to share my story, to reach out to others who needed a hand to hold or a shoulder to lean on. I volunteered at the community center, taught baking classes at the church, and mentored young women who were finding their own way in the world. Each day brought new challenges but also new joys, a reminder that life in all its messiness was a gift. One evening, as the first frost dusted the garden, I sat on the porch with Loretta, wrapped in a quilt and sipping hot cider. We watched the moon rise, silver and serene, and talked about the future, about dreams yet to be chased, about the legacy we hoped to leave behind. "You know, Odessa," Loretta said, her voice soft, "you turned your pain into purpose. That's something special." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my bones. "We all have that power, Loretta. We just have to believe in it. As the night deepened and the world grew quiet, I whispered a prayer of gratitude, for the home I'd saved, for the family I'd rebuilt, for the strength I'd discovered within myself. I knew there would still be storms, still be moments of doubt and fear. But I also knew that I was ready for whatever came next. As I was Odessa Mae Johnson. I was a survivor, a mother, a friend, a builder of hope. And my story, my real story, was just beginning.